Why do I hear Masaki Endo? Apparently reviewing Yu-Gi-Oh! 5D's era archetypes is the thing that I do now. Stardust Dragon is the ace monster of the main character of Yu-Gi-Oh! 5D's Yusei Fudo, and from that dragon came an archetype, much like RDA who we visited last time. Funnily enough, Stardust is a counterpart to RDA, seeing as Yu-Gi-Oh! 5D's was primarily Yusei, Jack, and friends. Stardust archetype has persisted and evolved throughout the years, with keycards piping up from format to format and having new waves of support every once in a while, making it a prime target for discussions like these. I've been looking forward to reviewing this one because it's actually one of my favourite archetypes. Oh, I wonder why. Hence why this video took less than 50 years to come out. Let me introduce Stardust Dragon. It's a generic level 8 Wind Dragon Synchro monster with 2500 attack, 2000 defense, and this effect. When a card or effect is activated that will destroy a card on the field, quick effect, you contribute this card, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy it. During the end phase, if this effect was activated this turn and not negated, you can special summon this card from your graveyard. In terms of protagonist ace monsters, going from Neos to this was like going from Devil May Cry 2 to Devil May Cry 3. Sure, it's been made far less relevant by the passing of time and evolution of Yu-Gi-Oh's game state, but this effect was fantastic back in the day, and can still come in pretty clutch now. Destruction effects will never fully disappear from the game, and Stardust can shut them all down, albeit at the cost of waiting till the end phase for it to return. Note that the effect isn't actually once per turn, so multiple copies of Stardust, or managing to revive the card in the same turn, could shut down multiple destruction effects. If I had to give one complaint about Stardust Dragon, it's that the long nose on this guy looks like he could use it to steal my chips from the stratosphere like a Stardust seagull. This is a joke, I love the design. Despite its age, Stardust is still an awesome card, and you build the deck around it, so he's far from washed up. The best protagonist ace monster. Well, that was a pretty good start. It certainly aged a lot better than Red Dragon Archfiend. The symbolism between Stardust Dragon's self-sacrifice effect and Yusei's personality and desire to protect those around him is also a nice touch, but that's a topic for a different video essay. I feel it's worth elaborating on here that Stardust as an archetype is diverse. It's a synchro monster from over 10 years ago that spawned an archetype around it, meaning some of these upcoming cards are Stardust cards, some of them are specifically Stardust Dragon cards, there's some Synchron cards that have Stardust in their text, and there's the Cosmic Synchro Monster archetype. Add that all together and you get a vast array of cards, enough to push this video to 57 minutes, what the fuck? So to save my sanity and to get this video out at a reasonable pace, I'm going to do a few quickfire cards right now to save us all a bit of time. Satellite Synchron is a useful tuner in the deck that has some synergy with Stardust Dragon's revival ability, as well as level modulation. Satellite Warrior is a very good boss monster for a Synchro spam deck and is easy to bring out with Satellite Synchron and Stardust Dragon. Synchro Chase is a very useful card that makes your Warrior, Synchron or Stardust effects unable to be reacted to and enables some recycling after you make your Synchro plays. Malefic Stardust Dragon is one of the best Malefic monsters, but it's near irrelevant in a Stardust deck. Stardust Shimmer is a worse monster reborn and not even a Stardust card in Japanese. And Stardust Divinity is a match winner card and therefore illegal, but props to Stardust for being able to flex having this in their archetype. And now we enter into the archetype properly, with the first main deck monster, Stardust Phantom, a level 1 light spellcaster with 0 stats and the following effect. When this card you control is destroyed by your opponent's card, by battle or card effect, and sent to your graveyard, you can target one Stardust Dragon in your graveyard and special summon it in face-up defense position. You can banish this card from your graveyard to target one face-up Dragon-type Synchro monster you control. Once per turn, that Synchro monster cannot be destroyed by battle, but each time this effect is applied, it loses 800 attack and defense at the end of the damage step. Does this card just scream pointless to anyone else? The fact that Stardust Dragon is built to go to the graveyard and come back more than an underpaid cemetery worker means that the protection won't be sticking around for very long even if you manage to pull it off, and it's only once per turn. It's not even a quick effect, as if to take the piss even further. The revival ability is also outclassed by later support in the archetype, so Stardust Phantom is mediocre in every sense of the word. Leave him at whatever cosplay convention he came from. Getting away from that weirdness, we have Stardust Xiaolong, a level 1 light dragon with 100 attack and defense and this effect. When you synchro summon Stardust Dragon, you can special summon this card from your graveyard in attack position. Each turn, the first time this card will be destroyed by battle, it is not destroyed. The resurrection is cool because free level 1 body and the battle protection is there. Overall underwhelming, but thanks to newer support, he's actually worth running it too in a dedicated Stardust Dragon deck. And the reason why Stardust Xiaolong is now a recommended card is this cute little space snake, Stardust Worm. It's got no attack and defense, is a light level 1 dragon and has this effect. If this card is in your hand or graveyard and you control a level 8 or higher Dragon Synchro monster, you can special summon this card but banish it if it leaves the field. You can tribute this card, special summon up to 2 level 1 light dragon monsters from your hand or graveyard except Stardust Worm, but their effects cannot be activated. You can only use each effect of Stardust Worm once per turn. Combined with Xiaolong and later support, this card is pretty sweet. It's a free material alongside any high level Dragon Synchro, not just Stardust, and tags out for 2 monsters that have no restrictions on what you can use them for. Synchros, Links, Xyz, you go nuts. Though, to be fair, the selection is rather tight, probably why the effect is unrestricted. I personally run Worm at 1, and you'll see why soon enough. The final level 1 monster is... Starduston? The next monster is a crossover between Yusei's 2 main archetypes, Stardust and Synchron, and it's this, Stardust Synchron. It's a level 4 Wind Machine tuner with 1500 attack and the following effect. If this card is in your hand or graveyard, you can tribute 1 monster, special summon this card, but banish it when it leaves the field. Also, you cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck for the rest of this turn, except Synchro monsters. If this card is normal or special summoned, you can add 1 spell or trap card from your deck to your hand that specifically lists Stardust Dragon in its text. You can only use each effect of Stardust Synchron once per turn. This is one of the best support cards I've seen for a Synchro archetype ever. It's a level 4 tuner with a very easy special summoning condition from the hand or graveyard, and then it searches out any support card you might need. The minor downside is that it doesn't search Stardust support, just cards that list Stardust Dragon, but this both shrinks and expands the list of searchable cards, so you'll still get your main play extenders. It's a great card that helps out the deck so well, and we'll get into exactly why very soon. Like right now, with the next monster, Stardust Trail, Synchron's partner and cool. It's a level 4 light dragon with 500 attack, 2000 defense, and if a monster you control is tributed, except during the damage step, you can special summon this card from your hand or graveyard, but banish it when it leaves the field. If a Warrior, Synchron, or Stardust Synchro monster is Synchro summoned using this card as material, you can special summon 1 Stardust token, Dragon, Light, level 1, no attack, no defense. You can only use each effect of Stardust Trail once per turn. Like I said, Stardust Synchron's partner and cool. You tribute to summon Synchron, and then you bring out Trail alongside it for an easy Stardust Dragon, 4+4. The secondary effect is also sweet because free material for Synchro plays. However, that token serves another purpose that we'll get into later, something notably more specific and notably more awesome. To finalize, Stardust Synchron and Stardust Trail are a fantastic pair that serve this archetype incredibly well and are definitely worth running at 2 or 3 each in any Stardust deck you can imagine. The final main deck monster for today is Stardust Dragon Assault Mode, one of the pioneers of the Assault Mode lineup of monsters, evolutions of existing Synchro monsters triggered by a trap card, Assault Mode Activate, which lets you tribute the base form Synchro monster to summon the Assault Mode equivalent from your deck. Assault Stardust is a level 10 Wind Dragon with 3k attack, 2500 defense and the following effect. Cannot be normal summoned or set, must first be special summoned with Assault Mode Activate and cannot be special summoned by other ways except its own effect. When a card or effect is activated, you can tribute this card, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy it, and this is a quick effect. During the end phase, if this effect was activated this turn and not negated, you can special summon this card from the graveyard. When this card on the field is destroyed, you can target 1 Stardust Dragon in your graveyard, special summon that target. It's just an upgraded version of Stardust, there's really nothing else to it. Higher stats and the destruction prevention is upgraded to an Omni Negate, plus a floating effect into the Stardust Dragon you used to summon this thing. The Assault archetype got a new wave of support cards that make it infinitely easier than ever to use these powered up monsters, and I'm honestly a big fan of the concept. Not sure I'd want to run this thing in anything outside of a dedicated Assault mode deck, but it's definitely a powerful monster, and with Stardust Synchron and Trail, it's only gotten more accessible. Good card, no doubt about it. And with that, we're back to the Synchro monsters. The first one is distinctly less dragon than you may be expecting, but please, while you're in a Seto Kaiba, it's still perfectly valid. Stardust Charge Warrior is a generic level 6 Wind Warrior with 2000 attack and the following effect. When this card is Synchro summoned, you can draw 1 card. You can only use this effect of Stardust Charge Warrior once per turn. This card can attack all special summon monsters your opponent controls once each. Not much to complain about here, it's one of the best level 6 Synchros in the arsenal. Free draw on summon and multiple attacks, though I can guarantee that the latter effect barely even gets noticed. Charge Warrior is best used as a stepping stone to higher level Synchros, helped along by the free draw. I more often than not run a single copy of Charge Warrior in my extra deck, it's a sweet combo piece. A level 6 that isn't quite as useful however is Stardust Assault Warrior. Same attribute, type and level and requirements as Charge Warrior. It has 2100 attack, 1200 defense, and this effect. When this card is Synchro summoned while you control no other monsters, you can target one junk monster in your graveyard, special summon it. You can only use this effect of Stardust Assault Warrior once per turn. If this card attacks a defense position monster, inflict piercing battle damage. The way I see it, this card is only useful if you can instantly grab a level 2 junk tuner from the graveyard and make Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon. Otherwise, I really don't see any reason to play this over Charge Warrior. Next up is Shooting Riser Dragon, a level 7 Synchro tuner with 2100 attack, 1700 defense, is generic and has this effect. If this card is Synchro summoned, you can send one monster from your deck to the graveyard whose level is lower than this card's on the field, and if you do, reduce this card's level by that monster's, but for the rest of this turn, you cannot activate the effects of monsters with the same name as the sent monster had in the graveyard. You can only use this effect of Shooting Riser Dragon once per turn. Once per chain, during your opponent's main phase, you can, quick effect, immediately after this effect resolves, Synchro summon using this card you control. One of the best Synchro tuners in the game, as evidenced by its limited status on the ban list. Or at least it was until we banned Crystron Hellspawn. Hell yeah baby, let's go! Free Foolish Burial upon its Synchro summon, though it does lock you out of using that monster effect for the rest of the turn, plus it lets you Excel Synchro during the opponent's main phase, like Formula Synchron and Excel Synchron. The easy level modulation means that Riser Dragon can fit almost any level you need to bring out your prospective Synchro monsters, even better than Excel Synchron because that's more limited to the Synchron archetype. Shooting Riser Dragon is the Stardust equivalent of Red Rising Dragon. While not quite as good at jumpstarting your plays as the Red Boy, it's overall a more versatile tool in your arsenal, and if you can find a use for it, there's no real reason not to run it. Rising up to levels, we have the manga equivalent of Yusei's Ace Dragon, Stardust Spark Dragon. It's got the same everything as Stardust Dragon except that it's a light monster, and it has this effect. Once per turn, quick effect, you can target one face-up card you control. Once during this turn, it cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects. An interesting alternative to the regular Stardust, but in my opinion, not quite as good. Spot protection for any one card isn't bad by any means, but I'd much rather take the chance to negate and destroy the offending card altogether. Not an awful card, but an inferior option to the base Stardust Dragon. The most recent addition to the Stardust lineup is Excel Synchro Stardust Dragon. Same type, attribute, level, stats and requirements as the vanilla Stardust, and it has this effect. If this card is Synchro Summon, you can special summon one level 2 or lower tuner from your graveyard. During the main phase, quick effect, you can tribute this card, special summon one Stardust Dragon from your extra deck, this is treated as a Synchro Summon, then immediately after this effect resolves, Synchro Summon using monsters you control as material. This turn, that Synchro monster is unaffected by your opponent's activated effects. You can only use each effect of Excel Synchro Stardust Dragon once per turn. The Resurrection is fantastic because you can quickly go into any applicable level 10 Synchro like Starlight Warrior, even better if you manage to get out Formula Synchron to enable Synchro tuning. Quick tributing into Stardust Dragon gets you another Synchro summon on the field for effects like Hyper Librarian or Synchro Chase, and then immediately going into a higher level Synchro that now has effect protection for the turn is excellent. In particular, it combos well with the field spell Starlight Junction in order to spin an opponent's card back into the deck whenever you Synchro summon on your opponent's turn. The fact that this card isn't called Stardust Speedway disappoints me eternally. Definitely worth running one copy of XL Stardust in the extra deck. And speaking of XL Synchros, we have our first one, Stardust Warrior. It's a level 10 Wind Warrior with 3000 attack, 2500 defense, and it requires a tuner Synchro monster and one or more Synchro monsters to Synchro summon, and it has this effect. If your opponent would special summon a monster, you can tribute this card, negate the summon, and if you do, destroy it. This is a quick effect. During the end phase, if this effect was activated this turn and not negated, you can special summon this card from your graveyard. If this card is destroyed by battle, or if this face-up card you control leaves the field because of an opponent's card effect, you can special summon one level 8 or lower warrior Synchro monster from your extra deck. This special summon is treated as a Synchro summon. Gotta say, this is a pretty sweet card. High stats and 1/2 of Solemn Strike on legs, only held back by the cooldown period, but it's not once per turn, so if you can revive it, negate away. The fact it can float off of any card effect removal means you won't be left defenseless if the warrior happens to fall. My personal choices would be Road Warrior for the high stats and special summoning effect, Jet Warrior for the bounce on summon, or Nitro Warrior for lack of better options. Stardust Warrior isn't that hard to summon with the combo of Stardust Dragon and Formula Synchron, or even XL Synchron if you can lower its level, but the problem is that the competition in the level 10 Stardust Synchro area is surprisingly tight. You'll see what I mean in a minute, but there's really no reason to disregard this Transformer looking lad. Looks like he transforms into a gaming PC. Before we get into the Synchro monsters you guys are probably here to see, we have one more monster to cover. Here's Stardust Chronicle Spark Dragon. It's got a Blue Eyes stat line, it's level 10, requires a Tuna Synchro monster and one or more non-Tuna Synchro monsters, and has the following effect. Must be Synchro summoned. Once per turn, quick effect, you can banish one Synchro monster from your graveyard. This card is unaffected by the card's effects for the rest of this turn. If this card in its owner's possession is destroyed by an opponent's card, by battle or card effect, you can target one of your banished Dragon Synchro monsters, special summon it. In a vacuum, get it because space? This card doesn't seem awful, but it's the least impressive monster in the entire extra deck by quite some way, and yes, that includes Assault Warrior. The only use for this thing is a protected beat stick, and while the protection is good, it would have been so much better if it protected your field, or at least allowed any card to be protected rather than hogging everything to itself. Very anti-Stardust of you. The recovery is a nice touch, but at this point it's too little too late, especially if you haven't banished Synchro Dragons. While Stardust Spark was a potential choice to run over Stardust, no one will choose to run Chronicle Spark Dragon over the alternatives. Next up, we have one of the most famous monsters in the entire archetype, Shooting Star Dragon. Famous for being the only monster to be summoned to the absolutely epic track of Clear Mind. Alongside Akiza's cleavage and all of the murders, this is easily the worst thing that 4K's changed in the dub. It's a level 10 wind dragon with 3300 attack, 2500 defense, and requires a Tuna Synchro monster plus Stardust Dragon. It's the progenitor of Axel Synchro monsters, except for TG Blade Blaster, but he didn't get any sick beats to summon and duel to. Once per turn, you can excavate the top 5 cards of your deck, shuffle them back in. Also, this card's maximum number of attacks per battle phase this turn equals the number of Tuna monsters excavated. Once per turn, when a card or effect is activated that would destroy a card on the field, quick effect, you can negate the effect, and if you do, destroy it. Once per turn, when an opponent's monster declares an attack, you can target the attacking monster, banish this card, and if you do, negate that attack. During the next end phase, special summon this card, banished by this effect. This card is certainly impressive. The destruction negation is just a straight upgrade over the base Stardust, and now it can protect you from attacks as well, with the annoying caveat of both targeting and having to special summon itself back, meaning it can be negated and stuck out in deep space. The multiple attacking effect is pretty sweet as well, with the potential 5 attacks, although more realistically it's going to be 2 or 3. It's potentially enough to end a game with direct attacks, but be warned that if you reveal no tuners, Shooting Star can't attack at all this turn. Shooting Star Dragon is a pretty sweet monster overall. The problem is just the game has evolved so much that it's a little outclassed by modern alternatives, kinda like how Red Nova Dragon was outclassed by King Calamity and Supernova. Hey, look at those parallels between counterpart archetypes. Nice work, me. The specific summoning condition is the final nail in the coffin of the card's prime being behind it, but despite all that, it's still a good card, and not exactly irrelevant in today's conversation. You'll see what I mean when we get to a later Synchro monster. A curious theme happened over the last couple years, and that's the existing Stardust evolved forms getting retrains or extra evolved forms, which I suppose is the equivalent of Stardust Synchros going Super Saiyan 3. The evolution of Shooting Star Dragon is the love child of Yusei and Bruno, Shooting Star Dragon TGEX. It's got the same everything as the regular Shooting Star Dragon, except it has a generic XL summoning requirement, meaning it's more accessible right off the bat. If that wasn't enough improvement, look at this effect. When a monster effect is activated that targets a monster you control, quick effect, you can banish one Tuna from your graveyard, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that card. You can only use each of the following effects of Shooting Star Dragon TGEX once per turn. When an opponent's monster declares an attack, you can negate the attack. During your opponent's turn, if this card is in your graveyard, quick effect, you contribute 2 Synchro monsters, special summon this card. This is basically what King Calamity was to Red Nova, an upgrade in most areas, though not a full replacement. TGEX has superior attack negation, unlimited negation from monster effects that target as long as you have the resources, and it can even bring itself back from the graveyard via quick effect, albeit at a hefty price. I'd say this is overall an improvement on the regular Shooting Star Dragon for the modern state of the game, but there's still a place for the original in the deck, given its own negation effects and multiple attack potential. As an added downside, TGEX can't benefit from any Stardust Dragon support, seeing as it's technically not even part of the archetype. All in all, either of these dragons can get you good results, so it mainly comes down to preference and your deck which one you run. The next monster in the lineup is another famous anime monster and another counterpart to a card I reviewed in the last video. Please welcome the Majestic Star Dragon. And in this case, Majestic is far more appropriate than it is for the Red Boy. It has 3800 attack, 3000 defense, is level 10, and requires Majestic Dragon, Stardust Dragon, and one non-Tuna monster. Majestic Dragon is level 1, has no attack or defense, and cannot be used as Synchro material except for the Synchro summon of a Majestic monster. Ouch. Well, what does the big boy do? During either player's turn, when your opponent activates a card or effect, you contribute this card, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy all cards your opponent controls. Once per turn, you can target one face-up monster your opponent controls, negate its effects until the end of this turn, and you can activate one of its effects as this card's effect once this turn. During the end phase, target one Stardust Dragon in your graveyard, return this card from the field to the extra deck, then special summon that target. I know I made the joke last time, but it still applies here. One turn end phase tagouts on a monster with such a complicated summoning condition makes whatever effects it has very hard to consider, no matter how good they may be. If we could ignore the summoning condition for the time being, Majestic Star Dragon is actually pretty great. The Omni Negation effect is awesome, being turned into a nuke effect, and it can now negate and steal monster effects on the field. It's a little niche, but the negation is always welcome on its own, and the copying could potentially lead to something hilarious. Like, imagine managing to steal Judgment Dragon's effect to turn this card into a supernova waiting to destroy your opponent's entire life savings. But, like I said, that summoning condition is a son of a bitch, and it makes this all a big what if, such as the nature of Majestic monsters. However, in Dawn of Majesty, a bunch of very useful support cards were released to help out with the Majestic playstyle. First of all being a retrain of Majestic Dragon, Converging Will's Dragon. It has the same type, attribute, level, stats, and restriction as the original, but it has a secondary effect. When you draw this card, you can reveal it, special summon it. Then, if you control a level 8 or higher Dragon Synchro monster, you can special summon one level 1 Dragon monster from your deck, and you can only special summon it once per turn. Built-in special summon condition and retrieves the level 1 you need to complete the recipe for a Majestic Star Dragon or Majestic Red Dragon. It's simple yet brilliant, provided you get lucky with the draw. However, only losers rely on luck. Hence why we're briefly bringing in the Spell and Trap lineup early to show off this card, Arrive in Light. When this card is activated, place one level 1 Dragon monster from your hand or deck on top of the deck. Neither player can return Stardust Dragon or a Synchro monster that lists Stardust Dragon in its text from the field to the extra deck. If a Synchro monster is special summoned, except during the damage step, you can apply one of these effects, but you cannot apply that same effect of Arrive in Light again this turn. Effect 1 is draw one card, Effect 2 is special summon one tuner from your hand. It's perfect. There's basically nothing else you could ask for this card to do. It's searchable, sets up Converging Will's Dragon, gives you draw power for any Synchro summon, albeit once per turn, provides swarming, and even nullifies the downside of Majestic Star Dragon, as well as being a clutch protection card against Madolches. I'll bake your tiramisu using the power of the fucking sun, you Candy Crush looking ass! Obviously, the ideal play goes as follows. Tribute a monster to special summon Stardust Synchron, searching out Arrive in Light, then special summon Stardust Trail from your hand or graveyard via its effect. Activate Arrive in Light to set up Converging Will's Dragon, then Synchro summon Stardust Dragon to get the draw effect, and activate that as Chainlink 1. Summon the Trail token off a Chainlink 2, then draw Converging Will's Dragon, which then activates the summon itself, plus a dragon from your deck. Bam! Everything you need to summon a Majestic monster off of a 3-card setup, which in a dedicated Majestic deck, isn't really all that hard to pull off with this new support. As a side note, if you summon Stardust Worm, you can then tribute it for 2 Stardust Xiaolong, allowing for more field presence and future potential Synchro plays if you can get more tuners on board. All of the support synergizes in a lovely way, and I'm a huge fan. It makes Majestic Star Dragon an actually viable option if you want to build a Majestic deck, though it is a shame that Majestic Red Dragon got shafted this badly. However, you may have noticed in that combo I described, we now have Stardust Dragon, Converging Wills, a level 1 Dragon, and a level 1 token. That's level 11 altogether. Does the combo just leave us with an extra piece? Nope, continuing with the theme of going even further beyond, we have the Super Saiyan 2 of the Majestic Star Dragon, shooting Majestic Star Dragon. Putting aside how awesome this card is for a moment, I just want to point out that the name could make for a funny note on a to-do list. This beast is level 11, Wind Dragon with 4000 attack, 3300 defense, and requires Majestic Dragon and 1 or more non-tuner monsters, including a Dragon Synchro monster. Must first be Synchro summoned. Once per turn, you can negate the effects of one effect monster your opponent controls. This card gains 1 additional attack each battle phase for every monster in your graveyard that is Stardust Dragon, or is a Synchro monster with Stardust Dragon in its text. Once per turn, when your opponent activates a card or effect, quick effect, you can banish this card until the end phase, and if you do, negate the activation, and if you do that, banish that card. As someone fused Majestic Star Dragon with Shooting Star Dragon, this honestly seems like what would be the most likely outcome. Consider the Stardust equivalent of Red Supernova Dragon, and while it might not be quite the walking apocalypse that thing is, it's still fantastic. Permanent non-targeting monster effect negation, at least 2 attacks with a 4k body, a more generic summoning condition, and an Omni negate that prevents graveyard floating, without needing to actually special summon itself back. There's really nothing to complain about at all here, it's just a fantastic group of effects for a Stardust boss monster. It may not have the nuke effect of the regular Majestic Star Dragon, which is the OG's biggest advantage over this upgrade, but it has better negation effects and more of an ability to end the game right away. This card is fantastic, and definitely the main focus of your Majestic deck, with Majestic Star Dragon serving more as a spicy side option. We now move from the Majestic subset of the Stardust lineup to the final 3 monsters, which I'll refer to as the 3 level 12 Giga Dragons. The first of which is Stardust Cipher Divine Dragon. It's a light dragon with 4k attack and defense, and it requires 1 tuner Synchro monster and 2 or more non-tuner Synchro monsters. That is a hefty summoning condition, but you'd be surprised how easy it is to actually pull off, especially with ever-evolving Synchro summoning strategies. The effects are that this card must be Synchro summoned and cannot be special summoned by other ways. The first time each card you control would be destroyed each turn by battle or card effect, it is not destroyed. Once per turn, during either player's turn, when your opponent activates a monster effect, you can negate that effect, and if you do, destroy 1 card on the field. You can banish this card from your graveyard, then target 1 level 8 or lower Stardust monster in your graveyard, special summon it. Not too bad indeed. Blanket Field Protection, which is what I said Chronicle Spark Dragon should have had, and it adds monster effect negation combined with selective card destruction, which I find a cool alternative to the negate and destroy standard Omni negation. The comeback effect is rather nice, seeing as if you mill this card straight from the extra deck, it can still serve a purpose as a revival card. All in all, Cipher isn't a bad card by any stretch of the imagination, it has a very cool lineup of effects and a lot of utility. But ultimately, it is the weakest of the Giga Dragon trio, and that should be pretty clear why when we get to the next card. And now, it's the monster that I imagine many of you were here to see. It's not a direct Stardust monster, but it is related to the Archetype. It's related to Yusei, and I've always wanted an excuse to talk about this thing. So without further ado, let me introduce Shooting Quasar Dragon. It's the final boss monster of Yusei Fudo, where he turned full body Super Saiyan and practically ascended to godhood on a motorbike in space in order to summon it. And, well, it reflects that immense moment and then some. It's a titanic light dragon with 4k attack and defense, and it requires the same things as Stardust Cipher, except Quasar did it first. For that large cost, you get these effects. Must be Synchro summoned and cannot be special summoned by other ways. This card's maximum number of attacks per battle phase equals the number of non-tuner monsters used as its Synchro material. Once per turn, during either player's turn, when a card or effect is activated, you can negate that activation, and if you do, destroy it. When this card leaves the field, you can special summon 1 Shooting Star Dragon from your extra deck. Utterly fantastic. Double attacks on a 4k body, and a once per turn Omni negation make Quasar truly a monster to be feared, especially if you can summon multiple on 1 turn. It even floats into Shooting Star Dragon if it doesn't miss timing, hence why I said the OG Shooting Star was still relevant today. Quasar is a fantastic card that arguably stood up as the boss monster of the Synchro mechanic for a long time, and with the ever-evolving style of Synchro spam, there are more and more ways to bring this thing out emerging every year, especially now that the Master Rules have lightened up. The only downside of the card isn't even related to itself, but more Yu-Gi-Oh! As a whole. A once per turn quick effect Omni Negate went from being something you'd only find on a godlike dragon to just a standard effect on a lot of the game's lower level boss monsters. Power creep will always be a bitch, but Quasar stands the test of time as one of my favourite monsters ever and an absolute icon. You build a deck around it and get a rush of satisfaction every time this dragon descends onto the battlefield. 10 out of 10. However, I did say we had a trio of dragons to look at, and this is Numero Tres, the notorious Cosmic Blazar Dragon. Same stats, level, type, and summoning conditions as Quasar, except this is a wind monster, and it has this effect. Must be Synchro summoned. Quick effect. You can banish this card until the end phase to activate one of these effects. 1. When your opponent activates a card or effect, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that card. 2. When your opponent would summon a monster, negate the summon, and if you do, destroy that monster. And 3. When your opponent's monster declares an attack, negate the attack, then end the battle phase. Blazar is equally as fantastic as Quasar with the ability to negate anything your opponent does once per turn, essentially acting as Solemn Judgment and Negate Attack all in one. The prospect of facing down more than one of these on your first turn is seriously scary, or even worse, the pair of Quasar and Blazar. This is why Cipher is the weakest of the trio. Both of these are better negators, and Quasar can swing for a lot more damage with even better floating, so I don't see why you'd ever want to choose Cipher over either of these two. As for which of these dragons I believe is better, I'll sum it up like this. Quasar is better at ending games, while Blazar is better at maintaining your dominance over the game state, with the added benefit of being a better target for limit overdrive than Quasar. You can't go wrong with either one though. They're both incredible monsters, and will forever stand as some of the most powerful and awesome Synchro monsters of all time. Well, these 5D Synchro archetypes really know how to cap off monster lineups with a bang, huh? Now we move on to the spells, starting with Necroid Synchro. Banish 1 tuner and up to 2 non-tuner monsters from your graveyard, and if you do, special summon 1 Stardust Synchro monster from your extra deck, whose level equals the total levels of the banished monsters, but it has its effects negated, and this special summon is treated as a Synchro summon. Useful card for the late game, you know, turn 5 and beyond, letting you get out a Stardust monster. Yes, it doesn't have any effects, but it's been properly Synchro summoned, and can be used as a stepping stone into higher monsters, or just revived later. Worth running a copy. One of their most recent spell cards is Stardust Illumination. Send 1 Stardust monster from your deck to the graveyard, or if you control Stardust Dragon, or a Synchro monster that lists Stardust Dragon in its text, you can special summon it instead. You can banish this card from your graveyard, then target 1 Stardust monster you control, increase or decrease its level by 1 until the end of this turn. You can only use each effect of Stardust Illumination once per turn. A useful array of effects, Archetypal Foolish Burial, or even summoning monsters straight from the deck if you have the field set up, and the level modulation can be surprisingly useful, such as helping get out shooting Majestic Star Dragon with less materials, or turning Stardust Synchron into a level 3 so you can summon level 7 Synchro monsters, such as Black Rose Dragon. It's searchable as well off of Stardust Synchron, so it's worth running at 2 or 3. The next spell card is Majestic Absorption. Target 1 Stardust Dragon or 1 Synchro monster that lists Stardust Dragon in its text that you control, then activate one of these effects. Equip 1 face-up monster your opponent controls to that target, it can attack directly this turn, or this turn each time it destroys an opponent's monster by battle, inflict damage to your opponent equal to the destroyed monster's original attack. You can only activate 1 Majestic Absorption per turn. Sadly, this is the most mediocre of the new wave of support, but that's mainly because everything else is so good. You either get a Flame Wingman effect, direct attacking, or non-targeting monster equipping, with that last one in particular being unconventionally dangerous, especially as Stardust Synchros love to yeet themselves off the field every other phase. The downside to this card is that it doesn't directly extend your plays and is a dead draw without a setup board, although with Stardust Synchron's searching ability, that last part is mitigated to an extent. Overall, it's an optional weapon in the arsenal, but it can be good in certain situations. For their last spell card, we have Cosmic Flair, a quick play. Target 1 Stardust Synchro monster you control. This turn, if that Synchro monster you control battles an opponent's monster, shuffle that opponent's monster into the deck at the start of the damage step. If a Stardust Synchro monster you control would tribute itself to activate its effect, you can banish this card from your graveyard instead. As far as signature attack cards go, Cosmic Flair is pretty great. It quickly turns a Stardust monster's attack into a non-targeting spin, the best form of removal except Kaiju's or face-down banishing, and it can let you use a Stardust monster ability twice per turn. The only problem is that it's not searchable because it doesn't list Stardust Dragon in its effect text. Not an essential part of the deck, but a fine one-off. And that's all the spells. Easily a much more impressive lineup than Red Dragon Archfiend. As a side note, my theory as to why the spell lineup for RDA and up until recently Stardust is so small is because Yusei injected so many turbo duels, where spell cards aren't as common thanks to the requirement for speed counters. Just food for thought. What we do have a lot of though, like any Japanese anime, are traps. The first of which is Stardust Mirage. If you control a level 8 or higher Dragon Synchro monster, special summon as many monsters as possible from your graveyard that were destroyed and sent to your graveyard by battle or an opponent's card effect this turn. You can only activate 1 Stardust Mirage per turn. This is an anime card, and it shows. Obviously, you're meant to revive your Stardust during the end phase and then summon everything from the graveyard you lost while it was gone, nice and simple. The problem is that this is modern Yu-Gi-Oh! So if you're in a position where you lost all your monsters, who's to say you didn't lose all your life points along with them? If you didn't, you probably did all this for, what, 1 revive, maybe 2? That's not what I'd call a worthwhile investment. This card also isn't searchable thanks to its more generic activation condition, so it's hampered even more in a Stardust deck. However, seeing as I researched these videos now, I did find an OTK on the Yu-Gi-Oh! Tips page. I'm not reading it out, but just take a look. I mean, I've seen more bombastic Yu-Gi-Oh! Wiki OTKs. Continuing with the less than stellar trap lineup, we have Stardust Respark. When an opponent's special summon monster declares a direct attack, if its attack is greater than or equal to your life points, negate the attack, and if you do, draw 1 card. Then you can special summon 1 Stardust monster from your extra deck or graveyard. You can only activate 1 Stardust Respark per turn. This card is a major risk-reward gamble that might not even pay off in the end, given that in order to activate it you have to be about to lose, and if you're playing against a Tribute Summon deck, you might not even get to activate it in the first place. The extra draw is nice. The summon is great because you can also recycle from the graveyard. It's just kinda like reaching for a cheeseburger by putting your arm between an unstable guillotine. I run one, but it's my first choice when it comes time to side deck out for game 2. Stardust Flash is their next normal trap. Target one Stardust monster in your graveyard, special summon it. Archetypal monster reborn, not much else to say. It does prevent you from immediate advantage because it's a trap, but it can allow you to resurrect Stardust monsters during your opponent's turn to potentially get off their effects twice in one turn, or enable interruption. If the card was a quick play spell it'd be leagues better, but as it is, it's a fine one-off as a preference pick. Next up we have what would happen if Buster Blader got his hands on Shooting Star Dragon's card name, that being the trap card, Shooting Star. If a Stardust monster is on the field, target one card on the field, destroy that target. Simple targeted card pop off a slow trap. Unsearchable by Stardust Synchro. Inoffensive but completely unnecessary. Next up, it's a card you might recognize, Starlight Road. When a card or effect is activated that will destroy 2 or more cards you control, negate the effect, and if you do, destroy that card. Then you can special summon one Stardust Dragon from your extra deck. This is one of the most famous Stardust cards, and for good reason. Generic negate for any mass destruction effect such as Raigeki, Twin Twisters, and nowadays it could even stop a Lightning Storm or Harpy's Feather Duster, assuming your field has enough cards on it to be destroyed. If that wasn't enough, you then get a Stardust Dragon. Admittedly, it isn't Synchro Summon, so be careful when using its effect or when using it as material because you won't be able to get it back. In any case, Starlight Road can absolutely come in clutch, and I consider it worth a spot in the deck. The last normal trap is Converging Wishes, a near-perfect adaptation of an incredibly anime card. If you have 5 or more Dragon Synchro monsters with different names in your graveyard, special summon one Stardust Dragon from your extra deck, this is treated as a Synchro Summon, and equip it with this card, but banish it during the end phase. That equipped monster gains attack equal to the combined attack of all Dragon Synchro monsters in your graveyard. Each time that equipped monster destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you can banish one Dragon Synchro monster from your graveyard. That equipped monster can attack an opponent's monster again in a row. This card is objectively not good, but goddamn is it fun to use if you build a deck around it and you can pull it off. If you stock up your extra deck with 4k attack dragons and then send as many as possible to the graveyard with Zaborg the Mega Monarch, your Stardust Dragon will come out with up to 34,500 attack points, enough to one-shot any monster in the game and almost any amount of life points, and the multiple attacking is a nice touch. Combine this with Majestic Absorption to almost guarantee a victory via direct attacking, which you'll want to do because you kinda need to end the game on the turn you get this card off. With cards like Stardust Synchron and Trap Trick for searching it out, and Imperial Iron Wall for keeping your dragon around at the cost of multiple attacks, there's a few ways to get extra utility out of Converging Wishes, if you can get around the absolutely absurd activation condition. Like I said, you build a deck around this card, and the deck probably won't be great, but it's one of the most awesome victories you can pull off. Entering the continuous lineup, we have Stardust Wish. Once per turn, if a Stardust Synchro monster you control is tributed to activate its own effect, except during the damage step, you can target that monster, special summon it. Your opponent cannot activate cards or effects in response to this effect's activation. Monsters special summoned by this effect cannot be destroyed by battle while in attack position. So this is basically Stardust Flash, but better, at least as an extension card. The summon is unnegatable, and you get battle protection, albeit with your life points still at risk, and it's a continuous trap, so it can be reused. Stardust Flash is still valid because it's a more adaptable combat card, whereas this is more limited in its use, but Stardust Wish is another fine one-off and can make for some spicy play extension. The last continuous trap, and the last card in general, is Majestic Mirage. If a face-up card you control leaves the field by your card effect, or to activate the effect of your card, and the card that left the field was Stardust Dragon or a Synchro monster that listed Stardust Dragon in its text, you can apply one of the following effects, but you cannot apply that same effect of Majestic Mirage again this turn. 1. Special summon one of those monsters. 2. Banish one monster from your opponent's field or graveyard. 3. Any damage you take this turn is halved. This card is essentially the perfect combo with any direct Stardust Dragon Synchro, my personal favourite choice being Majestic Star Dragon, but any option is valid. Tribute to negate effect and nuke the field, immediately resummon your dragon through this, what's not to love? And that's only one potential use for this thing. You also get non-targeting banishing and even saving your life points in a pinch. Is it a bit situational? Yes. Is it a slow trap card? Yes. Can it be a dead draw? Absolutely. It's a totally optional piece of the deck, but I think it can add a nice finishing touch to your Stardust Dragon boards with an extra bit of utility. And finally, we come to the end of the card lineup. We just covered like 3 archetypes in one there. New record, go me. We move on now to a numerical grading, with a couple name changes for the categories. Consistency. Charge Warrior and Arrive in Light provide some draw power. Stardust Synchron lets you search out back road that enables further plays. The Synchron side of the archetype benefits from support cards from across the highway. There's a decent amount of ways to get your plays rolling, whatever those may be. There's a fair amount of bricks you can draw into, and Ash Blossom can G to the T to the F to the fuck off, but that's not enough to ruin the deck. Overall, a 7 in consistency. Offense. Obviously Stardust is a little underpowered when compared to RDA, but that's by design, and the evolve forms make up for it. Shooting Majestic Star Dragon and Quasar have guaranteed multiple attacks on 4K bodies, there's non-destruction removal accessible through multiple cards, Majestic Star Dragon is a reusable field nuke under the right circumstances, there's a lot of ways to take out your opponent's field and their life points. Stardust gets an 8 in this area, but if Converging Wishes was more consistent, it'd be a 10. Defense. One of the deck's stronger sides. It's the entire theme of Stardust. Sacrifice yourself to save your friends, then come back during the end phase to preserve the happy ending. It's been there since day one. Stardust Dragon, Spark Dragon, Shooting Star, Majestic Star, Shooting Majestic Star, Cipher, Quasar, Blazar, Arrive in Light, Stardust Swish, Stardust Road, Stardust Respark. Yeah, I think you guys get the point. There's a lot here to keep you safe and stop your opponent in their tracks. I feel good about dishing out another 7 here as well. And yes, I'm including negation and defense. Recovery. If the defense fails, can the archetype come back from being slapped? Well, yes. Given revival is a built-in feature of the poster boy in half of his evolutions, this is to be expected. There's multiple revival and graveyard interaction cards, Stardust Synchron and Trail can function from the graveyard, and the majority of the boss monsters have some form of floating, so as long as you got started, you can keep going for a little while. A solid 7 in this area. Finally, versatility. Stardust is a bit hard to judge because it's a generic Synchro monster with support that doesn't really lock you into its own archetype, so you can mix these monsters in with basically any Synchro deck. If I were to limit it to pure Stardust, you're probably looking at either a Synchron mashup, which is a fairly formidable Synchro spam deck, or a Majestic focus build, which is hardly a weak deck by any means anymore. The various lineup of boss monsters and focus on negation essentially make Stardust a problem against any deck, because no one likes getting their Gate Guardian summon negated by a Cosmic Blazar Dragon. There's really not too much to go into here. The deck can easily summon a variety of problem monsters that can take the cake.
And it probably ate it too!
Another 7. This all leads up to a score of 36 out of 50, roughly comparable to RDA. While Stardust may not be a 10 out of 10 god in any particular aspect of deck strength, it does everything to a fairly good level. You want damage, you want negation, you want combo extension, this deck can do it all and then some, albeit not to the level of tier 0 or anything. Here's my current Majestic Star Dragon build, focusing on both the OG and the upgraded form, and here's a more generic Synchron Stardust build focusing on trying to get out Quasar and Blazar in a timely fashion. My closing thoughts on the Stardust Dragon archetype is that, overall, I just love it. I've expressed gripes in the past with how Yusei and Jack basically got all the love from the writers of 5Ds, as well as the card support genies, but Stardust still ended up being my second favourite deck to play, mixed with Synchrons, or even by itself with the new Majestic support. The archetype was one of the pioneers of the Synchro era, my favourite extra deck summoning mechanic, and it maintains its iconic status even today. The negation focus exists in a way that's effective but not obnoxious, and the archetype still has multiple ways to go on the offensive with its large variety of dragons. With all the different boss monsters available, there's no shortage of options for game winners. Quasar, Blazar, and Shooting Majestic Star Dragon being the standouts, and the lower level members of the archetype are excellent tools to reach those heights. The theme of the archetype is consistent in all the support cards, and I can appreciate that. While I'd always be down for more Stardust support, I think the archetype is in a good place right now, with its increased consistency and great new boss monster, similar to how RDA is. So even if this turns out to be the last Stardust, these stars will keep shining brightly for a little bit longer. Hey there everyone, thank you for watching all the way through to the end, hope you did enjoy it. Sorry that it took so long to come out, but I had to re-record the entire thing or the video would have been probably over an hour long. Sorry for bringing in so many cards that weren't directly related to the Stardust archetype, but you can just consider them extra value and they all fit the theme. The next video is being worked on as we speak and will be done as fast as possible. Please remember to check out my community tab and vote on what video you guys would want to see next. While it doesn't directly determine the video, it does help me decide which one to make, because I just want to give you guys the content that you want to see. In any case, thank you all for watching, and I will see you all next time.